Hi, I'm Rick Dior, and today's lesson will be on Mitchell Peters' Solo Number 1 from Advanced Studies for Snare Drum. This is a really great book. It's a book that I've used for years and years with students. There's certain books that I always turn to for my performance majors at the college, and this is one of them. And I recommend, if you're serious about playing orchestral percussion or really any kind of snare drum, that you study this book. It's full of complicated rhythms. It's extremely musical, has lots and lots of dynamic content, different tempos, different time signatures, etc. So this solo number 1 is not easy. It's the first one in the book. And this is the third book of Mitchell Peters' series of snare drum books. The intermediate snare drum book, which comes before this, is also a really great book to use with your students. So let's talk a little about this etude. Before we go on, I'll just explain. Today I'm playing on, it's a Pearl Philharmonic snare drum. And the sticks I'm using are sticks that I make. These are leopard wood. They're about 72 grams. They have small barrel tips, which I like for articulation. So this solo is in 3/4 throughout, does not change meters, although there's several over the bar line kind of phrases. Sometimes the dotted quarter note will get the emphasis in the phrasing. As in all his solos, you need to pay attention to the dynamics. There's lots and lots of them. As far as stickings go, that's up to you. There's no stickings written out in this book. And for orchestral snare drummers, that's a real personal thing. So you can do whatever sticking you want as long as it gets you the results you want. That being said, there's certain things you want to kind of stick to, no pun intended. And what you want to do is when you have all flams in a row or several eighth notes in a row that are playable by one hand, you should go ahead and do that so it's really even. Remember, you're in back of the orchestra, and the whole goal is to play articulate, not fall behind in tempo, and everything needs to be really clean and really clear. Let's talk a little about the roughs that are in this etude. All of them are louder. A lot of times you'll have softer roughs, but in this etude they're loud. There's two ways to stick these. You can of course do them as singles. And I'm sticking that right, left, right, left. If you're a lefty, you can reverse that. The other sticking I like to use is right, left, left, right. Now that's a sticking I almost always use on my soft roughs. And it's a really good, consistent sticking. You will need to do a little bit of a lift when you play it soft, like this. Time permitting in the piece that you're playing. So there's a lot of those, and in this etude, the sticking I used was singles, like this. Now there's also lots and lots of these dotted 30-second notes. So in orchestra snare drum playing, it's very important to play those very close together, like this. And the way I do that is simply pulse my right hand, and then play my left hand very close to it. Now you want to use all wrists for that. There's no bouncing in that. So you have the ultimate control, especially when you're playing pianissimo. If you look at the third line, it goes like this. So that's the third and fourth lines, and you see it does have lots and lots of those 30-second notes. And when you play soft pianissimo, you play them at the edge, when possible. The other thing about this etude, you have lots and lots of rolls that crescendo. Now it's important when this happens not to overdo it. So I always try to relax on purpose when I do these kinds of rolls. So they sound like this. You don't want to force it, but as you get louder, you do increase your speed of the roll. So very slowly I'll show you. All right, that would be the slow motion version. And when it's up to tempo, so you see as I'm increasing the volume, I'm using a little bit more arms. And that's perfectly okay to do that. Again, as long as you get the result that you're looking for, it's fine. Then we also have these passages on the second page. The first line, it begins with these loud flam passages. There's a couple ways to stick this. So let me put on the metronome and I'll show you a couple different stickings. The first way is to do all one hand. So that, again, is a really good way to do it. In the etude, I did it hand to hand like this. So that's more of a rudimental sticking. I sometimes like to do that. It's a little bit of style. It looks a little better. But again, keep in mind that for orchestra playing, you want things to be as even as possible. So if you can get it more even with one hand, then do that. All right. The next line, line 2 of page 2, is the trickiest line in the piece. So here you have this, well, I'll play it for you so you can hear it first. 1, 2, 3. Now, that might not be tricky for those of you who are rudimental drummers, but if you're not, it's going to be difficult. So you see the third bar of that line, I use all right hand. And then all I'm doing is adding that drag. You could go, which is a very rudimental sticking, like kind of a Wilcoxon sticking, where you're alternating hands. And that rudiment is called a single drag. But again, in orchestral snare drumming, it might be safe to just do it with one hand. Now, those drags there, I'm playing a little on the open side, again, because I think it sounds good. You can also play them closed like this. But if it sounds better, play them open. Just a little open, not this. Again, that's more of a rudimental sticking, but this. Now, on your triplets in the next line, you want to make sure you keep all those even. And to do that, I'm using lots of wrist. So that evenness is extremely important, again, in all drumming, but especially orchestral drumming. Now, line 4 and the end of line 3 contains a very tricky kind of figure where you're going from triplets to sixteenths to quintuplets, groups of 5. So when you're doing that, I recommend practicing that slow. We'll turn the metronome down. Maybe 110 first. And just practice triplets. And then sixteenths. And then 5s. And then put it together. And when it's up to tempo, it sounds like that. Now I recommend putting a slight dot or emphasis on each grouping. That will help with the phrasing and to distinguish the change. All right, so that needs to be really clear. Finally, the only other difficult thing in this etude, well, it's all difficult, but the really difficult thing is line 8, the end of line 8. That sticking is tricky. So let me play that line for you. 1, 2, 3. So you see those rolls there, just like in the beginning, but here they're going to be a little softer, and coming up on this next measure, you have this sticking slowly. Where you're going to end up on your left hand if you single it. So it just so happens that at this tempo, that's really tricky to fit in those strokes on that roll. So I'll play it for you up to tempo, those bars. 1, 2, 3. An alternative to stay on the right hand would be to stick that triplet with 2 rights like this. And that sounds like this up to tempo. 1, 2, 3. So you do have an option there, but I think the singles sound good. So I'm starting that with my right, alternating, and then ending up starting that closed roll on my left hand. So now we'll play the whole line to the end for you there. 1, 2, 3. So you see I have to put a few more buzzes. In other words, it's a quintuplet underlying rhythm on my closed roll. Sometimes you have to do that to get to your strong hand. So that's it for this solo, and we're going to be doing every single solo in this book over time because I think it's really, really important. You know, Mitchell Peters is just a fantastic educator. I think probably one of the best. He wrote so many books. And unlike a lot of folks who write so many books, his are all great. So I definitely recommend checking out his other books. He has marimba books, timpani books, lots and lots of snare drum books, marimba solos, of course, the famous Yellow After the Rain that everybody's played. So he's a great artist and definitely deserves as much credit as we can give him. Thanks.